that is potentially an indicator of testimony later that will be influenced.
Okay, now on the bottom of page 14, there's a provision, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 comments down, and it starts with Mr. Wood. Well, do you see that comment in your report?
I do.
Would you read that for me really quickly?
Robert Wood. Well, I'm the visionary guy, so you know. So anyway, again, I just wanted to meet with you real quick and introduce myself and Mackenzie. She's.
Okay. Now, his comment that I just wanted to meet with you really quick. In your opinion, is an 18 to 20 minute narrative a real quick meeting?
I think it depends on what the content would be. I could conceive of it as a quick meeting if it was a meet and greet without getting into the theory of the case and so forth. But I would think typically, because the day is set out for an interview by the police and presumably they're waiting or there's an appointment time, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. Glad to meet you. Glad you're in town. Hope things go well today. Just wanted to introduce myself. Would be more than enough time.
Okay. And then if you would be so kind, in the middle of page 15, review the statements that were made on the tape, and then let me know when you're ready.
Are you referring
just
to...
not read them out loud, just review them quietly to yourself.
I understand, but are you referring to the top of 15 to the
middle of 15? The middle of 15.
Down. Got it. Thank you. Okay.
Okay, now in the middle of 15, there's some reference by Mr. Wood suggesting that Mr. Means is incompetent and that he doesn't know what he's doing. You have analysis at the bottom of your report on page 15 that says bias derogation. Would you please elaborate on that for me?
Well, sure. In this particular case, there's really no purpose and no reason, if we're trying to get the witness's testimony, to have any discussion about any of the other attorneys or parties or players in this case. And so in this case, where the defense attorney is mentioned as incompetent, no experience, lying about the prosecutor, and that he basically will be recused from being a defense attorney when additional charges are filed, all really derogate both his reputation as well as his influence. Because he's inevitably going to be discharged, his influence is ultimately zero. He doesn't know what he's doing, so actually his influence could be negative. And furthermore, he's just a liar. So when we have all of this information as in terms of derogation, in terms of influencing a witness, first of all, it'd be very daunting to challenge somebody who is saying this about opposing counsel. It would take a pretty gutsy witness to go like, well, hey, wait just a doggone minute. I don't think that's fair or that's accurate, especially when we know the stakes that are involved in this particular case. And so the derogation really serves a function to minimize the credibility, in my opinion, of the defense, and to further solidify, you're in my group, you're in the in group, we are LDS. I've told you information about the case. You know more than the average person. By the way, we don't want to go any farther than this. We have to, and it's really Chad. She knows, but it's mostly him. We have here, a continued pattern that's expanded now very flagrantly with the comments about the defense attorney.
Okay, and this is a flagrant display, is it not?
I've done this for years. I've never seen anything like this.
Okay. If you would go on with your review of the top of page 16, I believe there's 3 sections that I'd like you to review, and then describe your analysis of the inner circle bias that you relayed in your report, sir.
Right. So he's thanking the witness for coming in, which is fine. But the witness is then saying how weird this is to be speaking for the prosecution and speaking for the defense, and how she's torn. And that's a relevant comment to me, because the issue wouldn't be at all how she's torn. The issue should be what evidence does she have to offer through testimony. That she may be torn is something that people could always discuss, I suppose, at a different point in time. But for her to bring it up is suggesting to me this conversation has prompted and promoted her feeling torn. She came in and has made some positive statements about her sister earlier in the narrative that were not followed up on or regarded. And now she's pointing out, I'm between a rock and a hard place. I'm on the horns of a dilemma. It's weird to be dealing with both sides in this. So the inner circle bias that comes out of this is, where are you going to land? How are you going to reconcile that? Whose side ultimately are you going to likely be on? Again, if this is an interview situation, ultimately that's the reason she's here. There shouldn't be a side to land on at all. There should simply be her unfettered testimony.
Okay, so your comment, the prosecutor's statement, an effort to influence the witness, has caused cognitive dissonance. Please explain to me what you meant by that statement in your report of these statements that Mr. Wood had made.
Right. Cognitive dissonance is just a $5 way of trying to say, I'm feeling pressure on two different dimensions that are really causing me to struggle. And that's what she points out. Prosecutor, defense. Where do I go with this? The dissonance is the confusion that stirs up mentally. What should I do with this? How do I reconcile this? How do I handle this? If I'm asked a question and it draws on me to be loyal to my sister or to her defense, what do I do, having heard the theory of the case and the prospects and the information from the prosecutor? There's no reason a witness whose information is simply trying to be garnered should ever be put in the position of having to have that kind of internal battle. They should just be asked, what do they have to say? Not what do they have to decide to impact what they may say.
Okay. If you would be so kind as to read the rest of the narrative on page 16, and then discuss your findings on the top of page 17. And you could read it to yourself.
I am. Okay, so I'm ready.
And if you would provide us with some interpretation of your analysis in regards to the statements on page 16.
Well, what's happening here is, speaking just a moment ago about cognitive dissonance or being on the horns of a dilemma, prosecutor versus defense, she elaborates on that a little bit for a few lines. But then she now is comfortable enough to ask about whether or not there's going to have placed on the table the death penalty. Is this going to be a case where that will be something that will be thought, I believe. Let me check real quick. Yeah, so she asked whether there's going to be the death penalty, a capital charge. And again, that's reflecting she is extremely comfortable now with being in the inner circle of the prosecutor, because she's asking the person who's going to be responsible for making that capital charge if it does come about. And as far as being on the horns of a dilemma, we see a conversation about that. And we also would have to understand, this is my sister. Now, what do I do? How do I handle this being, and you take all the preceding information, being LDS, being this, being that. What do I do in trying to reconcile this? And how will this affect what I have to say when I am interrogated later today? Questions.
Okay. And then if you would be so kind as to review page 17 and then offer your evaluate or your findings on the top of page 18.
All right. So what we have here is a couple of biases that are concerns. One is the mutual activity, again, the refinement and the defining of what that means as our purpose. The purpose has been expanded by the witness who's comfortable enough to ask about the death penalty, but she gets a response instead of that's something I can't discuss, or we'll have to determine that later. So she does get a response, and she's informed that that's something that he really doesn't want to do, and alludes to how if there was really the ability to have perhaps a plea deal, you know, in a capital case in general, that would be life without parole. Um, there's an allusion to that. So now we have the witness who actually has a little bit of power. You know, what can she potentially do to influence her sister if she talks to her on the phone? Because about this potential capital charge, he doesn't want to do it, but and so we have insight into something that typically you wouldn't hear outside the prosecutor's office. You know, they're charging decisions and they're charging contemplation. So that's a mutual activity issue, defining that our mutual activity apparently is to not just have you tell us what you know as a witness, but now we can go to the extent of determining what do you know about how they died? Are you going to bring up the death penalty for capital charges? This has become a very, very odd uh, meet and greet prior to being interviewed. And then there's the inner circle bias because she is a member of the in-group. She can go ahead and ask these really high value questions. Are you going to charge my sister with capital murder?
Okay, now you made some reference in your report on page 16, and I'll go back to that very ever so briefly. And you said that, well, I may have that incorrect. In your report, you had referenced the fact that she now becomes a member of Mr. Wood's inner circle. Is that your assessment of what the provisions were referring to?
Right. That's part of what I just mentioned as being part of the inner circle. You know, we really see pretty strong evidence that she has adopted that viewpoint. She is part of the inner circle. She's asking case specific information, including charging information, and she's getting answers.
So specifically what you're saying, and please correct me if I'm wrong, at this point, this witness has adopted the prosecutor's theory of this case.
I don't know to what extent, but she is acquiescing to what he has to say. She's comfortable enough as part of the in-group to ask these kinds of questions. It certainly would appear to me that she is influenced strongly by the information she's heard and the questions
Okay.
asked.
Well, let's go on to read to yourself, page 18. Actually, you know what? I think, yes, let's read page 18, and then we'll talk about your findings on the top of page 19 when you're ready.
Okay, give me a second. Okay, I'm ready.
Go ahead.
We have a bias about religion because it's being said to her very clearly that you know, he's the one that really is the religious influencer in all of this, as well as how his views on theology and Latter-day Saint beliefs manipulated Miss Vallow. So we have a shifting of responsibility to Chad Daybell, part of the theory of the case, maybe a sigh of relief to the sister in her testimony. And from that standpoint, the religious aspect becomes a piece of the overall judicial picture where it doesn't make any sense to have it be a piece at all. And certainly doesn't make any sense, and this is an X bias in terms of inner circle, to have the prosecutor pass on further his theory of the case that the main culprit in this is Chad Daybell. And it came about partly because of religious reasons and so forth. So we're way beyond, again, just you're in town for an interview.
Okay. And then what you did is you made a number of findings, and I'm not going to have you go over those. The report speaks for itself about those particular findings. Uh, um, what I do want to do is go to your conclusion page on page 22.
Okay.
Let's start with acting ethically, the American Bar Association.
Well, there's going to be model rules of professional conduct for the ABA, and I simply noted in my report, I'm not an attorney. I'm an associate member for what it's worth, but I have no basis to make any comments about prosecutorial conduct related to the ABA model rules of professional conduct. It's outside the scope of my capability.
Okay, acting with integrity, and you're talking about Idaho Criminal Code 182604 sub 3, which is talking about it's a crime to influence or coerce a witness. And what did you include that in your report for?
Well, I included that because the efforts in this 18 minutes, to me, adversely affect the concept of free, full, and truthful testimony. Now, maybe not truthful, but certainly free and full. And so I'm simply suggesting, from my opinion as a forensic psychologist, that there was improper influence of the witness in this case by the prosecutor.
So your comment under acting with integrity on page 22 of the 24-page report is that the efforts of the prosecutor in the interview that I analyzed suggested improper influence of the witness. Is that still your finding?
Yes.
Okay. Avoiding, the next section is avoiding inappropriate interviewer behavior. Would you provide us your analysis on that conclusion?
Let me glance real quick. Sure. So here, very straightforwardly, greeting a person, asking open-ended questions and so forth. In terms of interview behavior, we really don't have an interview. It's a simple process. We don't have anything asked beyond one question about Chad Daybell. So the efforts that I see in this narrative have nothing to do with an interview of a witness brought into town to be interviewed. They have to do with influencing that witness, period.
Okay. And then I want to go down to the middle of page 23 of your report, where it says the witness is a vulnerable witness, and then provide your analysis of that provision.
Okay. Well, the witness is a vulnerable witness because of her relationship to the defendant. She's her sister. And to that end, anyone would acknowledge that that's an emotional relationship of one dimension or another, to the point that she has asked the prosecutor about whether or not capital charges will be brought. So a vulnerable witness, a person who emotionally is highly involved in a situation, is a person that really needs to have the utmost professionalism in their questioning and in their treatment and in their handling. And the reason is because their vulnerability makes them more susceptible than the average person to having their comments be suppressed, influenced, be exaggerated. You can go in whatever direction. It's going to vary according to the person. But that's why I raised a concern about her as a vulnerable witness, because I believe she is one.
Okay, and then the next paragraph, the interview with the prosecutor provides the witness, and if you would elaborate on that conclusion.
Well, I think that the thing here we have is really kind of fencing in the witness in terms of what's okay to believe and who she should align with and what's not. So we have it be known that the defendant's manipulative, he's wimpy, he's outside of LDS doctrine. He is a person that probably is the main bad actor in all of this, which may or may not influence what she would say about her sister, but you would think that it would, because if he's really the bad actor, then you don't have much to lose by saying whatever you care to about the sister, especially since the prosecutor does not want to bring capital charges and would prefer to have this case be somehow settled, perhaps. And then we have from there the defense attorney's malignment, really, again, putting a fence in, going like, hey, whatever's going on that side, it's not going to last, not going to be there. He's lying, he's incompetent. So don't pay any attention to that. I've answered your questions. I have cooperated with you. I've told you what's going on. I'm your ticket.
Okay, and then the next paragraph says the prosecutor specifically asked the witness to consider various aspects. And if you would elaborate on your conclusion in that paragraph.
Well, in various times, I want you to consider, I want you to suggest, thinking about, I'm paraphrasing a little bit liberally here, but she is really asked to consider and told the theory of the case. And so when that occurs, it basically, in my world, in forensic psychology, you consider that coaching. I'm going to tell you what I think is accurate. You're agreeing with me. I have acquiescence. Let's keep going. Well, I answer your question. Now you're in the in group. So the impact of all of this is to, again, go back to the concept of co-opting. We're bringing that person into the circle. And now that person is highly vulnerable to providing information that will be favorable to the prosecution and not to the defense, in the sense that it may not be brought up, it may not be answered fully, it may be suppressed, who knows. But the impact of all of this is not neutral, and it certainly is not favorable to the defense. It is adverse to any defense, and it is favorable to the prosecutorial position.
Okay, and if you would be so kind, and this will be my last question, would you read the last paragraph of your report for me, sir?
It strains credulity to think that the efforts of the prosecution had no impact on the subsequent testimony of the witness. It is apparent during the interview that she seeks to please the prosecutor with her responses and begins to volunteer information in an apparent effort to help him. It is likely that the subsequent interview of the witness has been influenced and tainted by the nature of the initial interview with the prosecutor.
So is it your position then that this witness has been influenced by Mr. Wood's conduct during that 18-minute discussion?
It is.
All right, Judge, I have no further questions.
Prior, well, let's take our lunch break at this time. We are starting late, but we'll do a 1-hour lunch break. So we will be back on the record at 1:40 p.m. Does that give everyone sufficient time to do what they need to do during the break?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
All right, thanks. We'll see you all back in an hour. Mr. Davidson will continue with your testimony after that. Thank you. Or Dr. Davidson, I should say.
Thank you.
Your Honor.
Kendall, are you there?
Yes, we are live streaming still, and Doug will put up the message.
Oh, okay, sorry.